listeners to share your story with us. Before I gave them a little bit of an introduction before we got started, but I know you already.
Mhm.
I've known you for a while. And so I know about you already. And I would love for my listeners to I emailed you to connect with you about Reiki and holistic services. And we ended up talking for like an hour about a whole bunch of other things. And you started out as a financial planner and now
Mhm.
you are a holistic life coach. So let's start by letting my listeners get to know you a little bit better. Tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you go from where you were to where you're at now?
Yeah, I know, completely opposite. Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm so glad that you're here. I always tend to just
Yeah,
dive in because I'm so excited about the information. I'm like, hi, 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 tell me some stuff.
yeah, no. And you know what's funny? As I just heard myself say that they're opposites, they actually really aren't. So, as you mentioned, so I'm also a certified financial planner. I started financial planning in 2000 after I graduated business school. Had a couple jobs, and then I landed at a brokerage firm in 2003, where I was there for like almost 17 years. I loved it. I loved helping people. Part of it was really about one, I loved the team that I worked with, and which is huge because I feel like if you enjoy the people you work with and you're having fun, it doesn't feel like a job. Like you
Yeah.
don't mind going to work, which that's how it was for a really long time. I loved helping people create a vision and making it happen. And it was just happening a lot, basically through their finances. But it was more than that. And then I'd say probably around like 2015 or so. So I had my daughter at the time was 5, my son was 2. I was commuting in the car for almost 3 hours a day. And that was, yeah,
I've
right.
been there. I feel it right now. I feel it in my heart.
Yeah. And it didn't have to be like that if I left at 5 a.m., which I did for a really long
Yeah.
time. And then after a few years of that, I was like, I'm not seeing my children. I shouldn't say I was miserable, but I was getting really bad anxiety. I'm like, I'm not seeing my kids. And I was showing up not as my true self at work, at home,
Mhm.
like everywhere. And for so long, I kind of convinced myself, like, this is what life is supposed to be right now. Like, I have the career, I have the 2 kids, and yada, yada. Like, it's supposed to be stressful. And it got to the point where I just started questioning that. I was like, this doesn't have to be stressful. Like, I don't think that this is meant to, like, this is not how I was meant to live my life right now. I was
Mhm.
gaining weight, even though I was exercising and eating. I didn't know at the time that it was like all the cortisol running through my system and stress hormones. And so I found coaching. A friend of mine was like, have you ever like looked into life coaching? I was like, what is that? It's like, so I started literally by listening to podcasts. Like I put on iTunes and I was just like life coaching, and I found this amazing woman, and that's how I started to spend my commuting time. And I was like, I didn't mind being in the car at that point. And through coaching, and then I hired a coach, it completely turned my life around. And I realized, I was like, there's so many other people that are in my shoes or were in my shoes that just think that life is like this hamster wheel. They don't know how to get off. They think it's like life is supposed to be stressful, like go, 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 like all the
Mhm.
time. And once I figured out it didn't have to be, I made it my mission. I went through numerous schools to get different certifications because I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to
Yeah.
help people actually live a happier life and have that balance and figure out like what it is they want and how are they going to achieve it. So that's where the coaching began.
You said something in there. Actually, you said quite a few things that like were amazing, which is like, let's start with like at the beginning. And you mentioned a few times during your conversation where, you said that you were in this space where you felt like this is just like, this is what the time of the life is supposed to be. I'm supposed to be rushing. I'm supposed to be doing this. And I remember myself being in that same position where there's this, like, do you think that like, just generally speaking, we have this philosophy that life is supposed to be hard,
Oh my
right?
God,
And that
yeah.
life is supposed, and like when you're in your career phase, you're supposed to be exhausted, you're supposed to be tired, you're supposed to feel like shit. Like this is all part of you rushing, like doesn't that feel a little like, and I love how you basically you challenge the it's not how can I do all these things that everybody is telling me to do and that it's not how do I make it work as much as it's maybe it's the entire idea that's wrong. And I'm curious, like, how was that for you, that realization where, because like you're looking around you and nobody else is seeing that there's something wrong, right? Like they're all
No.
doing their, so I'm curious, like, how did you feel? Because like the people who were working in your office were like, yeah, this is just how life is. And you're like, this is just how life is. This, and then you're like, no, wait, no, I don't think so. How was
Yeah.
that time period for you in terms of how you felt?
I think when I first realized, and I coach a lot about this, is all of the feelings that I was experiencing, like the frustration, the anxiety, the like whatever it was, I was creating those feelings with the way that I was thinking about things. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I realized like, okay, if I get in the car with the attitude of like, oh my God, I have like an hour and a half, like this is miserable, blah, 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 blah. I was going to feel angry, frustrated, and anxious or whatever it was. And when I realized, I was like, wait a minute, I'm in control of my own emotions. If I want to feel a different way on this commute, then I have to start looking at this differently. So that's when, and I was listening to the podcast, I started, because I always wanted to read a lot of books. But by the time like I'd put kids down, like I wasn't reading, like it just wasn't happening. So I was like, there's Audible. I was like, this is how I can get my books done. And I knew with the trajectory of where I wanted to eventually leave the financial planning industry, I was like, this is how, so I kind of flipped the switch of like, oh my God, I have an hour and a half commute to, okay, cool. Like I have an hour to an hour and a half right now, just on my way to work to like learn A, B, C, and D, or listen to like this book. And it got to the point, I remember a couple of times sitting in the parking lot because I was like, I just need to finish this chapter. So
I told
right? Yeah. And then one time I was crying at the end of, someone's like, what's the matter? And I was like, so-and-so just died in my book. And they're like, oh my God. But, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like I really am in control of how I'm viewing this, how I'm seeing it. And it wasn't the job. It was just kind of my lifestyle that, and for so long, like people were like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, I did it. I loved it. But when I started to not like it and it started to affect my physical body, my emotional state, and the people around me, that's when I was like, I got to figure this shit out. So,
did you work in Boston? Yeah. Did you work in Boston in the city? Wellesley. So like, and for like Boston traffic being like the whole, if you're in Boston, you know how big that traffic circle actually is. It's extra. And I also used to be in traffic for about 3 hours a day. My sister was in traffic for 5 hours a day when she lived up in New Hampshire. And I remember us having these conversations, where, because we both loved our job, the job itself is you love the people. And if you could beam from your house to your job, then it would be like no problem. But then you start, but like the commute, it takes so much out of you. And I think that like it did really start for us as well with like one of my favorite coaches actually taught me this. Instead of saying like this isn't going to work for me or this isn't working for me or I can't do this, it's how can I make this work for me or what can I do, right? So I started listening to my own like audibles and whatnot and I think that like, did you find, and you mentioned that like you started with those, like with that really, it's a very small step really of just changing what you're doing. But what's interesting is that you mentioned that tiny step. So whether it's, following someone on Instagram that's different, that now you're getting these positive messages that you weren't getting before or a different way of thinking, it planted the seed that eventually, like when you first started doing your Audible and listening to the books, you weren't like, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to leave my financial job and do something else. Like it really just started with you wanting to feel better, right?
Yeah, totally. Because I'm like, I was getting anxious and I couldn't figure out why. And then like without getting into the science of things, I then learned that part of that was like the part of your brain, like the amygdala part of your brain.
Get into the science.
No. So I get excited when I talk about this.
This is stuff we need to know. Tell us.
Okay. Well, I used to be like, I don't understand why as soon as I get in my car and I get on the highway, like I would start to get really anxious. Like I'm not a worrier. I'm not, anxiety is very common, but what was happening is because I had experienced like a panic attack or multiple ones on my commutes, my brain would automatically go there with like subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't consciously worrying about anything. And so what would happen is my body would all of a sudden start to get like, my heart would race, my stomach would get upset. And then I got in my head and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, oh my God. And then I was like, okay. I was like, this is not good. So, but I loved learning that because it's the same idea of when you smell something or you hear a song and it automatically brings you back to a different part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Without thinking about it. And it's funny because my daughter, so when I was pregnant with her doing the commute, I was really sick. And there was a Black Eyed Peas song that I used to hear on the radio all the time. And I never understood it until now because I used to joke with my husband, I can't hear that song without wanting to vomit. And it's no diss to the Black Eyed Peas. My stomach automatically started to get nauseous when I would hear it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the part of my brain that kind of was like, oh, I remember this.
Yeah, I remember where this came from.
Yeah. So when I realized, and I didn't realize it until after I did more research, I was like out of the that career. And I was like, oh my God, that's why I was anxious. Because and even now when I sit in traffic, I have to like tell myself, like, you're fine. Like this isn't 5 years ago. Like you're not going to have a full-fledged panic attack. Like we're here now. So it's been really cool because I've been able to one, help myself and really help a lot of people with that.
It is a mirror, like learning how the body worked in terms of like stress and, it was such a major, and trauma was a major game changer for me in terms of my growth as well. Because I was also in these situations where I'm like, I don't understand why I'm anxious or why am I scared or where is this coming from? And a lot of the clients that I've worked with, they actually often don't start out with me knowing that they have anxiety because they're not people who typically I mean, it's different now, obviously, because COVID has created a world in which we're all more aware. But they were like, I don't have anxiety. I've never had anxiety. I'm fine. And then after talking about the what it feels like, because I would share those experiences, and they're like, you know what, maybe I have anxiety. Maybe that's what that is. And then you learn something so new about yourself, and then it feels like you're out of control. But the truth is, like, realizing that actually gives you the control, because you can then start to figure out, okay, where is this coming from? I work with a therapist, work with a coach. But like, I think that for many of us, just figure out, like, especially if you've never had anxiety before, it can feel like a slap in the face. Like, what? Like, how did this happen to me?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Like I remember it started in my early 20s. I had a random out of the blue panic attack in a Blockbuster. And I was like, I felt like I was like tripping on drugs. Like I didn't know what was happening. I was like, I felt like I was out of my body. My heart was racing. And I was like, did somebody slip me something? What's happening? And then it was that fear of feeling that fear, like feeling that again, that kind of just got me stuck, because people would be like, what are you anxious about? I'm like, nothing. I was like, about being anxious. I don't know.
I don't know. It's, have you read The Body Keeps the Score?
No. Oh, I've heard of it. I gotta write that down.
It is. So it's one of those books where like it can actually trigger you if you are a trauma survivor. So it's one of those things where like I've been reading it slowly, but come on, my friends read it slowly. But my therapist actually she studied under the writer. So like I got really lucky in that, my early experience with trauma therapy came from that. And she really explained to me how it's almost like, when you look at geological rocks, like, and you look at the thing, you can tell what happened in, on Earth based off of what, oh, hey, this is a line of black. This means there was a forest fire or what have you. Your body does the same thing. It's just, we don't know how to visualize our bodies that way. But if you visualize your body as every day is just another layer coming on there, and then you have trauma, that trauma is going to imprint itself on your body, and you're not a rock. So it's going to then continue to impact you as time goes on.
Yeah. No, totally. And I recently started viewing anxiety in a different way based on another book that I was reading, and how a lot of it is, to your point, emotions that weren't dealt with as a younger person because you didn't know how to process them. So they are still in there.
Yeah.
Like, wanting to come out.
It's almost like a little pocket of like magma in there. And it's like, you need to you need to do the work like therapy or whatever work it is that, because
Yeah.
I did a lot of different type, I did a lot of different type of work, like, there was Reiki and therapy and NLP and whatnot to go through the process of like almost massaging that knot out. And so like bit by bit, you can get rid of them. And suddenly you're like, I always thought that as you got older, it just got worse because you just kept piling these more challenges on. But
Yeah.
now I feel like as you get older, it gets better because you learn the tools for how to like how to massage those things out of your body, which
Yeah.
is like what you help people do.
Yeah. No, and that's why I love that you just said that, because it gets better if you start to acknowledge that, right? Like versus like just if something creeps up, like I think about the analogy of like a ball, like a beach ball, pushing it under the water, pushing it under the water. When you finally let go, like that explodes. Like it's coming up. So it's recognizing like there's something there, and then yeah, like finding somebody that can help and like can share with you like tools to slowly let that stuff come up and be with it and heal it, because there's so much goodness on the other side. And yeah, a lot of times we don't know that things are buried.
And then when it comes up, like you're like, oh, like the other day I actually had a panic attack. We're funny, we're talking about this right now. I had a panic attack 2 days ago. I haven't had one in a really long time, and it was really weird. Like I was like, oh my God, Syra, and I'm like freaking out. And it was about something really, honestly, it's not even a thing that was a thing. It just,
Yeah.
and we both are like, this isn't about this. Like this is about something else. Like it's, and
Yeah.
so now I've worked through so many things, but clearly there is something within me that's like, it's time for us to do, and I have no idea what it is. But I want
Mm-hmm.
to actually touch on something you just said. You said slowly, right? Now, for many of us, we tend to be like, so like old me would be like, okay, I've discovered that this is a problem. It's about something else. Now I have to go at it full force and spend like, all my time figuring out what it is, go to therapy, like really just like
Yeah.
overdo it to try to like really quickly figure it out. But you are saying that, and now I tend to now be really like slow, but I'd like to hear from you, like, what is the benefit? Like, what happens if you try to do it quickly? What happens if I'm like, I want to run through this and like, because I just don't want to feel bad anymore. And so
Yeah.
I have to go fast so that I can get from this uncomfortable feeling to feeling great again in like
Mm-hmm.
as quickly as possible. Why does that? It never works that way, but why not? Why doesn't it work like that, Michelle?
I think when you try to go too fast, you're not actually looking at everything. And it can also have the emotional, just draining aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
where it might lead you to just stop and be like, you know what, I can't. Like, I'm just going to continue to go overeat, overdrink, shop. So, like, something that's going to create like that quick dopamine hit. But I think depending on somebody's situation, slow might be the way to go, because then you're actually taking the time to process things. You're not doing too much to kind of like overload your system. And I think with anything, this, like when you start small, I think in the long run, you're so much better off.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I feel like it also kind of gives you time to reflect. Like, I don't know about you, but my first response to things is not always the right one, So like,
mm-hmm.
or like my first like gut instinct of like, oh, this is what I should do, because those are all programmed into me.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I like to sit and this is uncomfortable, but it's like sometimes you just have to sit and wait and see what comes out,
Yeah.
like what will bubble up
Yeah.
to the surface.
I love
As
that you just brought up uncomfortable, because the more we can get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, like the sky's the limit on what you can do. Like, and that's a whole other topic about like pushing past fear and uncomfortable emotions, which is, that's one of the best ways I like to help people, is learning how to deal with a difficult emotion. And that difficult emotion could just be boredom. Like it could be like, I don't know, frustration, like whatever that is, but learning to sit with it, fear being a huge one, because a lot of times fear is why we stay stuck.
yeah, fear of what's
And
going to happen or not going to happen.
yeah, so I learn, the better you are, or the more practice you can get with dealing and sitting with and being with difficult emotions, the, I don't want to say easier, but the less power they'll have.
Yeah, I think that's like the less power. It's like it just becomes like a thing that you deal with, sort of like I have chronic pain. So like sometimes my pain is acute and I really can't do
Mhm.
anything. But for the most part, it's usually kind of just there and it's not a big deal. And it's like, you're
Yeah.
just kind of, and those are the days where I'm honestly happy because it's like, I'm not on, it's, I know that it's okay.
Yeah.
You said something, fear, you were talking about fear and moving through it. And when we move back into like your journey where you were now, because you mentioned to me that you learned all of these skills just to keep yourself alive. I love that when you said that. You were like, I learned how to
Yeah.
do this just so I could keep myself alive.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm curious because for people who, especially who are chronically ill or have a lot of things going on, like myself, at some point it can start to feel like, oh my God, like, am I just irrevocably broken? Like, there's just so many
Mhm.
things that I need to work on. But like, obviously, that's not your perspective.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know a little bit about as you went through this journey, how did you frame it so that you weren't feeling like, oh my God, do I have to learn something else? And instead framing it from like a space of excitement and like a way to like improve your life.
Yeah, and it's funny. I joke with the my team that I worked with because the last I would say, so they knew at least a year and a half, 2 years that I was going to transition out. And they were like so amazing. But I'd say the last 4 to 6 months of that journey, maybe four. Like I was an emotional basket case. Like I can laugh about that now, but like I think about the days that I would be in my office and I would start to cry or like get the anxiety and I'd have to go out and take a walk. And I think it was like I'm thankful I experienced all of that emotion because I look at it, I'm like, I experienced grief because I was leaving my work family that I had been with, some of them for literally 17 years. They were legit like my family. I was watching other people slowly take away my roles and responsibilities within, the team. And then I was like, oh my God, fear of like, I'm going from a very comfortable, very successful career, paid very well to, okay, I'm starting my own business. I have two small children. And it was like, and then like very structured life to, okay, now I'm in charge of my own stuff. So like the emotions just ranged. And I remember thinking like, this is going to, rather than let it like, because I think it would have been easy for me to be like, you know what, guys, like I've decided like I'm not going to leave. I'm just going to stay here, like, and continue on.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of that, which I feel like could have been an easier way out of all of like dealing with all of that, like pain and anguish and stuff. I looked inside and I was like, okay, how is this going to help me on the other side? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it has because there are so many people that are stuck and they're just afraid to take that leap.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I just think that experiencing all that, knowing that I could handle it and like be with those uncomfortable situations
Mm-hmm.
was going to benefit me in the long run. And I can't even tell you how much it has. Like,
So in retrospect, you are glad you made that decision.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad that I suffered the anxiety, like,
Mm-hmm.
because then I started to look into like, why was I like, what was it about the commute? What was it about sitting in my office? What were all these things that were triggering the anxiety? And that made me do a lot of research, a lot of studying. And then I realized it was my brain. Like it wasn't me. There was nothing
Yeah.
wrong with me. It was the way that my body and my brain stored past experiences that just kept coming back up the minute I'd be in a similar situation.
That's so powerful because like when you think about being in this space, right? Because that's where a lot of us find ourselves in this space, sometimes once, sometimes more than once, where you're in a comfortable space, you want to make a change, you want to do something different, and we were talking earlier about going slowly, and it feels like you took time to figure out what you actually wanted. And
Mm,
I feel like that's a really key element because, like, if you go fast, then you're going to think that what you want right now, like, so I'm going to give you the example, right? Is like most people say, I want a lot of money. But the
yeah.
truth is, that's not what they want. What they want is the money so that they are free to do or feel or certain things. So what they really want is that stuff that's after the money, not the money itself. They just think the money is the way to get there. And for many of us, we get stuck on the things we're supposed to want, right? So like
Mhm.
you had, by all intents and purposes, checked off all the boxes. You had checked off the boxes of successful adult life, adult, married with children, have a job, long term, from family,
Yeah.
like, and so a lot of people find themselves saying, I have everything. What's my problem? Right? Like,
Mm.
what is going on? But the truth, you were not, the things that make you feel fulfilled were not fulfilling you. So my question for you is, when
Yeah.
you work with people, do you find that that is a challenge in terms of like what it is that people, like, they come to you wanting one thing, and then after working with them you find that like there's something deeper or something else? Like, how does that work, pan out in your
Yeah.
experience?
It's really cool because I think the majority of the people that come to me have no idea what they want, but they know that they don't want what their current situation is.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the fun starts, because you get like working with people and talking with them, asking like questions and exploring, they start to think of things that they never thought were possible, that kind of were just like in the back of their brain, and we uncover like why do they not think this is possible, what limiting beliefs or what thoughts are actually holding them back. And it's kind of fun to just say like, here's a blank canvas, like if you could picture your life and paint whatever you want, like sky's the limit, like as big or as small, like what would it look like?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that happens in a 30-minute or an hour conversation. Like it takes like multiple sessions, because sometimes too, people will come to me thinking they want one thing. But then as we kind of dive into it and do some research and look into it, it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Like, so, and it's really fun to watch people kind of figure that out.
It is. What you described that I love is that, because I can see the face that they make when it happens too. Because like
Mm.
there's that moment where, because like there's things that they don't say that they want because they feel embarrassed or ashamed, like it's too big, too dreamy, too pompous,
Yeah.
too whatever, right? And like, so for example, buying a house on the ocean, which is now I have that, right? So I used to always say I
Oh
wanted a
my
lot
God,
of
me
money.
too.
Oh my God. I was like, I want a lot of money. I want a lot of money. I want a lot of money. Do you have, and I was like, no, that's not what I want. What I want is a house by the ocean. And when I switched that over, I got the house by the ocean. And it's like, because I was really, but for me to even say that out loud, it just
Mm-hmm.
was so silly. Like that could
Yeah.
never happen. And so I love that, like, but you said something so important, which is that it takes a lot of sessions. Now, one of the things that, going back to the people, usually they want something quick, right? So it's like, hey, how do you have that happen a lot, where, or how do you manage it when someone's like, I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I'm in that space that you and I have talked
Yeah.
about, and they're like, I only want 3 sessions, or only want one session, and like, you and I both know, like, and it's one of the reasons why I only do packages if I'm going to do anything, because it's like, I don't know that I can help you with such short, limited
Yeah.
time. So I'm curious to know, how do you navigate that with somebody who's like, I just want the answer quickly, tell me now in one session.
Yeah. So, like you, I don't do one sessions. Like, and I am very upfront with people. And I said, look, I'm like, it doesn't benefit, it has nothing to do with me. I'm like, it doesn't benefit you to hire me for 1 hour. Like, because part of the coaching, as you know, a lot of it is, yes, we could have a great conversation, we could come up with things. But then if you don't have somebody that's going to hold you accountable, like accountability is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of like be there. So like I think about it as like a coach of like a team. Like that coach is showing up and is there for like kind of the whole journey, like the whole season or whatnot. They don't just show up the first day and tell you like
Right.
how to play, what to do, and you're on your merry way. Like, because life, it's not linear. Like there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be things that come up. So typically, like I'll tell people, if we go through, most of my clients will do 12 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They'll start there, and that could look like 12 weeks, that could look like 4 months, 6 months, depending.
Right.
From there, then I will do a one-off with those people, because
Mm-hmm.
we've already like really gotten in there. I know them, they know me, and um then they don't need me as much,
Right.
some people. But and another thing too that I actually love, that I recently started doing more of, is the group coaching. And
Tell
I
me about
think with
that.
the group, yeah, so with the group coaching, um other people kind of like, they don't feel the pressure of just being like me and them. Because some people love it, some people don't. But it's a sense of community and like feeling like, oh my gosh, like I'm not alone in this. Like there's other people that are going through this or looking to do that. And community is huge for our mental like wellness. So I love it.
Oh my God, dude, it's like you know exactly what questions I was going to ask you because you've segued literally, you have segued right into the next perfect spot, which was actually about community. Because like it makes it easier when you were surrounded by people. And you talked earlier about when you left your job, when you were leaving your financial planning position and starting your own business, that everybody was very supportive, that you had a team of people who were behind you. And it actually, I wanted to touch base then, but we meandered, but now we're back. Is how important do you think, because like do you think that was for you to have a supportive family, a supportive friends, like people who were not saying, this is a stupid idea, you're never going to make any money with this, are you sure you want to, like the mean girl voices that often will come, and a lot of times these people are well meaning, they're like, I don't want you to, like, so I've worked with so many business owners who, they're well meaning in that they're trying to protect the people that they love from themselves, but then they say, and they'll say things like, how's your little business going? And it's like, or are you sure you want to do this? How do you feel like the support system that you have around you influences maybe not necessarily your speed of feeling better, but maybe the ease with which it happens?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I did have, and these weren't work people per se, but I did have a few people go something like, wait a minute, you're leaving to your financial planning to become a life coach. They're like, what is a life coach? I'm like, with that voice. I'm like, you need one. No, but I'm like, so I definitely had that one because people were like, what is a life coach? People didn't know. Now they're popping up everywhere. But yeah, I was so fortunate that the people that I worked with, and I think partly for a while, they didn't think I would do it, like that I would actually leave, because I think I threatened to leave so many different times, like during like stressful situations. But it was like when our team was growing, and I will say this to actually community. When I first left and I started my business, I was lonely. Like this was the summer, I'd say, so September 2020. I would put my kids on the bus, which I had never really been able to do. I did it once a week before when I was working. I found myself like kind of roaming around my house. Like the first like week or so, it was kind of like, like, but then I was like, oh my God, I miss people. Like I miss the conversations that I would have with my team, and like the little things, like talking about what happened that morning, like laughing or whatever it was. And then I found it doing all the different, like the SSWBN and PWR, like just networking. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I can do this, because I never used to. I was just very comfy with my family, and being able to meet most of them were women that were kind of in the same situation. I was like, it was a different kind of community, but those people were like, oh yeah, you can do it. So I did have a few people question my sanity when I was doing it. And now it's just, yeah. And I still like, I think about it and I still miss that part of having a team. Like I miss those people, but thankfully I get to see them and I still talk to them all the time. So,
it's so interesting you say that, because like I actually, having been on all the sides, where I've been a coach and I've done this, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm like, you know what, I actually want to go back to corporate for, and do like, and help facilitate change within corporate, because I was like, you know what, I kind of want that team nesting environment. And, what's interesting is that I feel like I've learned more about what I want, and so going back to work in a corporate environment at this, with the knowledge that I have now, because you said earlier, at the very beginning, you said it was my brain that was doing this, right? So like, and this was like years ago, so we're all younger, less experienced, and now where I'm at, I feel like the place that I want to go to is coming from a place of, I know what kind of life I want to live outside of the work. So
Yeah.
whatever workspace I go into has to be able to fit
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I don't think like, and I feel like the freedom that I got from working for myself for so long was
Mm-hmm.
really powerful to giving me that framework to understand that, okay, like you can leave, you can stay, you can work for yourself, you can work for corporate, but in the
Yeah.
end, it's all about how you approach it in your own mind and the boundaries you set and that they like otherwise it doesn't actually matter where you are.
Yeah.
If you don't work on this, you'll be in the same place everywhere.
Oh yeah. It's so funny. Like I joke with my team. So this was the fall of 2020. My biggest reason for leaving was my commute because of my life balance. And I'm like, a few months later, I was like, those suckers like started working from home every
Oh, I
day.
know, right?
I was like,
Well, you know what? Let me say, like, I think that actually COVID, one of the things that I think that it like shocked everybody out of is the belief that we've always had, all of
mm,
us, the world, is this is the way it is. This is the way it's always been, and we can't change it. So, like, I remember prior to COVID, the idea that you would work from home was laughable. Like, I remember having to fight tooth and nail just to get one work from home day or
yeah,
to be able to come in at a certain time, to like be able to be flexible. Now,
yeah.
again, I understand why that was the case, but the general community, the infrastructure of the world was such that
Mm-hmm.
this was an immovable belief system.
Oh yeah.
And now look at where we're at. And it really made me realize that there's literally nothing. So did you watch The Haunting of Hill House? I believe it was called. It was on Netflix.
Yes, I feel like there's something else that's named similar. So, but
It
yeah,
is. They both have like there's the Haunting of Hill House and then there's House on Haunted Hill. And like the
yes.
two of them that just
I
mess
feel
with
like
me.
I've seen them both.
I've seen them both. So what in the TV show, this little girl makes up a word of some kind, and Theodora and her older sister goes, "That's not a real word. That's a made up word." And Theodora goes, "All words are made up." And that
Mm,
realization made me realize, oh my God, all rules are made up. Every
yeah,
rule that we follow is made up. So if we don't
yeah,
like it, make
yeah.
up a different one, right? Or
No,
like
totally.
push
And
it.
that was one thing like my team was very good about because I worked from home originally. Like when my daughter turned 9 months, I was like, listen, something has to give. Like I don't see her. Um, from a team perspective, we went to like management and they were like, wait, what? So I was very grateful and blessed that like my team was willing to work with me. But to your point, like the corporate side was like, wait, no, like this isn't something like you have to be in here in order to
Mm-hmm.
function. And now they just see things a little bit differently. And it's like, yeah,
All it takes is the right circumstances for us to look at things differently. And I think that that's really a powerful thing because that's what you help people do. Like if all it takes
mm-hmm,
is the ability to see something differently and we on our own are not, it's hard to see something differently if you've seen it
yeah,
your own way. And that's the value of a coach. So as we start to wrap up, I had two questions that I really wanted to make sure that I asked you.
mm-hmm,
And one of them is actually related to coaching because you mentioned that coaches are springing up everywhere. And I know you and I know that you're an amazing coach. And so one of the things that I'd love to talk about is like I find it concerning how many coaches are out there right now because not everybody who says that they're a coach has done all the work that you
yeah,
have done to like learn
yeah,
like it's anyone can just slap I'm a life coach on my title and that is very concerning to me because there are some coaches who don't recognize that for example coaching is part of a package like you have coaching and then you probably also need a therapist like it's like
yeah.
there's certain things that like I'm not a therapist for example so I'm curious to know, like, if somebody, is looking for a coach, because like there's definitely gonna be people who are local who are like, oh my God, Michelle, which by the way, I'm going to post all of your information in the show notes so that people can access you
Thank you.
anywhere, because you're amazing. But if someone is like, you maybe are not the right fit for them and they are looking for a life coach,
Yeah.
what are some things that you would recommend that they look out for or they ask to make sure that like they're getting into a relationship that is good and healthy for them and not
Mm-hmm.
like getting with somebody who maybe has good intentions but may not necessarily have the skill set necessary to help them.
Yeah, I think one of the questions, because it's not a regulated industry, so like you said, anybody could just slap on like the title life coach. It's worth asking what their background is. Are they certified? Like
Mhm.
what makes them a life coach? Where have they studied? Like what areas maybe have they focused on? Like I know for me, like I did my first certification it was through a school and it was holistic. It was the holistic life executive and career coach. So we focused on that. I went through a year's worth of training, exams and so forth. Then I went through another life coach school because I love learning. So I was like, okay, like I could have kept it at that, but like, I was like, no, now I want to like research like this particular coach in her school and how does she teach? And that's where like the life and weight came in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really worth asking what their background is and do they continuously keep up with learning. So like from on the finance side, like we had continuing education that we had to do because things are always changing. The same as with life too. Like there's always new research coming out. Like I do like the Tony Robbins University because I'm like things are always evolving. More science is coming out on like things that work and don't work. So it's you want to ask what they're doing, you know, to kind of keep up with not studying, if you will, but like what are they doing to keep improving like their coaching skills, I guess is a good way to put it.
Like, are they like, is it like, I'm a coach, I'm done? Or are they also, because like, we're all lifelong learners and we're all like, you know, there's that I'm a coach, I know what I'm doing. So now here I am. And then there's the
Yeah.
coach who's like, well, I'm a lifelong learner and you're a lifelong learner. And I just happen to have some information that you want, but I'm seeing someone else who's coaching me on information that I want so I can learn and
Yeah.
get better and that kind of thing. Yep. I love that. And then you mentioned the SSWBN, which is the South Shore Women's Business Network that you and I are both members of, which I cannot recommend enough. And then you mentioned
Yeah.
another networking group. I'd love to get the name of that because, you know, I'm always looking for good networking groups to refer out.
Yeah. So it's PWR, which is it's the Powerful Women Rise with Nicole Perry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so like it's a mastermind. So it's not necessarily a networking per se, where I have actually met some amazing women, but you mastermind together each month. And there's all different areas, like there's different chapters all throughout Massachusetts and part of Rhode Island. But it's very cool. And there's a virtual one too. So that's Powerful Women Rise. And there's a kind of couple components to it. There's Powerful Women Revealed and Powerful Women Rise with Nicole Perry.
Love it. Thank you. Because, you know, one of the things that you mentioned earlier about like, you know, it is lonely being a business owner. But it's also, I think that the methodologies that are being taught out there in the world about how to market your business are actually, a lot of them are like using social media and though social media is fine and it's great. And I was, you know, a social media coach for years and the internet and all those, there's fabulous ways. But the truth is like in the last 10 years of experience, there's literally nothing that can compare with networking and person-to-person connection. Like it doesn't matter what kind, like I had to finally at some point realize, you know what, this is really just, that is just how it flows. So now I'm
I
curious,
stopped paying for Facebook ads. I was like, no.
Yeah, you know what? Best piece of advice. That's the soundbite right there. Stop paying for Facebook ads. Instead, join a networking group. Like that's. And now I'm curious. One last question for you. So speaking of learning, because I know that you are an active learner, and I happen to know that you're learning about Reiki right now. Just so that everybody knows, I've actually already got dibs on your very first Reiki session. So I'm curious. I was curious. When are we getting that Reiki session going?
So in February, I'll get my second level. And I'm going to put this out there and share it with the world because I haven't yet. So as you know, like the name of my business, it's Mind, Balance, and Wellness Living. When I started this coaching journey, I envisioned a wellness center, like a retreat type thing. That's what I'm working on now to open up. So think about this. It's a gym almost membership type thing, but it's for your mind and your body. There's no exercise equipment. It's somewhere where you can go. If you need an hour to like peace and quiet in like a meditation room and just clear like your energy, read a book, take a nap. We're going to have yoga. We're going to do all sorts of workshops, and it's just going to be a place to just go and be.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
Yeah, so that's where the Reiki comes in and the energy and stuff, because that's where I'm finding like it kind of just ties into helping people with their overall kind of wellness. So, and the name of my podcast, it occurred to me as I was like coming up with all this stuff. And I was like, you know, I was telling somebody, I'm like, it's like a gym, like, but you're going there for like peace and calm, and you're working on your mental strength. And I was like, it's kind of, like the boot camp. I was like, oh my God, my podcast is boot camp for your mind. So this is kind of like the gym of like the healing coaching world type
for your
thing.
like mind, body, and soul. Cause like,
Yes.
wow, I can see so much. Like, so I tell you, when you said that, here's what I saw, right? Is like having a space like that is sort of like the local Y, but it's a local, or like the Health Works, which is my like obsession. Like I wish we had a Health Works, but like Health Works for your mind. And it creates such a great community because everybody who goes in there is going in there for the same, like I'm like, sign me up. How do I love this. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
So,
Okay,
so just, that's in the works. I'm so happy I just said it and put it out there. Woo, universe.
I know you did. Now it's out there. So guys, Michelle is bringing this to the South Shore. So it's going to be fabulous. So Michelle, thank you. I can't even tell you how great this has been. So much fun.
Amazing.
I learned so much, and I know that everybody else did as well. When people are ready to jump in with you, because gosh, you were going to be able to help them so much. Where do they go?
You can go to my website, which is mbw.com, or it's mbwliving.com. I just messed up my own site. Or you can just shoot me an email. It's michelle@mbwliving.com. So
fabulous. And these will all be included in the show notes as well. So that like I've got links to your journal. I found your journal on Amazon. It's amazing.
Oh, yep. Today's
I found
great day.
Yep, I found so many. I was like, I got all your links in there, your like your website, Instagram and everything. So thank you so much. It's been so great hanging out with you.
Thank you.
Guys,
you
go connect with Michelle. I'm telling you, and if you're in the South Shore, make sure that you're paying attention to what she's doing so we can all go hang out at the gym for your mind when it opens.
Yes.
All righty. So I'm gonna stop recording. Okay.